Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. So today I just wanted to share with you guys about some great information, so basically from the Quran and also from the Hadith stated about the Ruqya, and also information about scientific achievements and also technologies from the past that is achieved by humans. So this is something about the Ruqya. So Ruqya is something like, in layman's terms, is something like a mantra or something like that. So where you basically say a word, something, on water, it actually affects the water, and then you drink this water, and then it actually has a healing effect on this water. So this is what a Ruqya is. So in Islam, there is something as a concept of a Ruqya. So we call it Ruqya Sharia. So why do I want to share this with you guys? Because the science behind Ruqya Sharia is very nice. That you can actually influence the properties of water just based on the words that you say on the water. So how does this happen? So I just want to share with you guys about the science behind this, because the science about properties of water that is affected by vibrations is not really well known by humans. Well, there's also some studies about it. It's just that it's not that in the mainstream physics science studies. So before we want to know about the mechanisms of how the mantra Ruqya actually works, so we can actually dive deep inside how the snowflakes actually forms. So if you study about the snowflakes, you can notice that the snowflakes is actually influenced by certain kinds of humidity, heat, temperature, and also vibrations on the snowflakes. It actually shapes the forms of the snowflakes that the water vapor actually forms into the shapes. So the snowflakes has basically a hexagonal shape. Excuse me for my English. So this shape is actually formed, is very sensitive towards vibrations. So same goes to the characteristics of the water of any liquid molecules of water. So what happens is that if you recite, let's say, Al-Fatiha, because Surah Al-Fatiha in the Hadith said that it is a form of a Ruqya. It has a Ruqya effect. So if you recite Surah Al-Fatiha onto water, what happens to the water is that it will rearrange itself to become in a hexagonal shape, and then it forms like the snowflakes formations. So this is what will happen onto the water if you recite Surah Al-Fatiha. And if you recite a lot of other things, let's say any other parts of the Quran that also has a Ruqya effect, it would actually make the water change its shape, molecule, bond. So this is something about the water. So we're basically talking about how you want to neutralize poison effects in the past videos, how you want to neutralize toxins and everything. So everything, if you want to neutralize those stuff, you can actually play in with the properties of the water, the liquids that will basically engulf the toxins. So this is how Ruqya, this is how mantra, well, in Islam is Ruqya Sharia, actually can actually give a healing effect because of the properties of water. So the properties of water that actually influence the toxin that it engulfs. So once you drink this water, it actually gets into your system, your body, and then it engulfs the toxins inside the body, which makes those toxins, by theory, by chance, it actually makes the toxin to be sort of neutralized, and the toxin could not actually work well. In other words, it actually stops the oxidative stress of the body. So this is what the water actually does to the toxin. So this thing is actually, you can study this thing based on also scalar wave frequencies. So let's say if you use scalar wave frequencies, they said that it also had the same effect, which is it reduced oxidative stress. So this is what this is what the Ruqya actually does to the water, and also as well as scalar wave. So I needed more studies about the scalar wave research. So, but based on some claims, it stated that the scalar wave actually protects you from oxidative stress, which is like the effects of the poison. So the poison actually causes oxidative stress, and then if you use scalar wave, it actually affects by chance. It means that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So because it's really sensitive, because water is really sensitive towards vibrations. So you may have another forms of other vibrations when you actually drink the water that is being recited with Surah Al-Fatiha, and also you can also have different kinds of vibrations. Let's say if you play in scalar wave frequencies, so like the Schumann frequencies. So if you play in with the Schumann frequencies, you can it would by chance protect you from oxidative stress, but sometimes it doesn't work because water molecules is really sensitive towards vibrations. So this is what is believed, the effects of the scalar wave. But anyways, you guys should not actually confirm this thing yet, because I'm still studying about this thing. You should not confirm that scalar wave actually protects you from oxidative stress or protects you from poison. So, and then I just wanted to share with you guys about some neat information from the Quran. So this is something about the hyperjump technology. So just so you guys know, because now we heard a lot of news about geopolitical news. I didn't want to actually dive deep down inside there. So there's a lot of technologies that uses hyperjump technology. Like, let's say you have countries that develop hyperjump technology, which is the it's called the hold on, what's the word? Exotic propulsion system. So what a hyperjump technology does is that you can basically accelerate from zero acceleration. Suddenly you accelerate towards like a few Mach of acceleration instantly. So this is something like a hyperjump technology, and the Quran is already mentioned in Surah An-Naml. So the surah stated that قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك فلما رآه مستقرا عنده قال هذا من فضل ربي ليبلوني أشكر أم أكفر. So what the Quran states is that, so there's a person who saith, who knows the knowledge from the book, he says that to Prophet Solomon, I will bring the throne towards you before you can even blink your eyes. So, and then فَلَمَّا رَآهُ مُسْتَقِرًا إِنَّهُ قَالَ هَذَا مِنْ فَضْلِ رَبِّي لِيَبْلُوَنِي أَأَشْكُرُ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. So, and then when Prophet Solomon actually saw this in front of him, he said that this is from the favor of my Lord to test me whether I am grateful or ungrateful. So what this means is that hyperjump technology is already available in the time of Prophet Solomon. So what the hyperjump technology does is that it can actually accelerate you, and then it actually dilates the time. So it causes a time dilation due to the ether effect, the compressions of the spatial compressions of the ether, and then it causes the person inside the field bubble to experience a dilation time, which means that the person can do things, a lot of other things, in a very short period of time. Let's say in a period of time before a person ever blinks your eyes. So a person, the rate of the eye blink is about like a few fractions of a second. So it means like in just a few fractions of a second, this person can actually travel back and forth from one place to another, and then they can actually bring the throne of towards Prophet Solomon before Prophet Solomon can even blink his eyes. So I basically wanted to share with you guys about this thing. How do I know about this thing? How do I came to know that this is a hyperjump technology and stuff like that? So just to share with you guys, I did some research about this topic. So for the past, like I think about since about 4 years, around 4 years already, about this research. So what I found is that hyperjump technology actually exists, and then there's a lot of countries actually develop hyperjump technology. So this is why you can see that certain countries, they had the upper hand in terms of the technology of like stealth jet, let's say stealth jet. Excuse me. They have the upper hand in terms of like how many miles the stealth jet can actually travel and stuff like that. So one of the jets that they developed is a hyperjump technology. So it's called the hyperjump technology because it actually creates a false gravity just in front of you. So what the false gravity does is that it actually makes your body fall towards that gravity. This is what it calls hyperjump technology. So I've been doing the experiment about the hyperjump technology for the past few years already. So the results was actually really interesting that this technology actually exists. You can develop an ionocraft, and then what you notice that based on the ionocraft, how the ionocraft floats in the air is that it's basically creating a false gravity just above it, just above the ionocraft. So the ionocraft actually falls towards the false gravity. So that's what it's called. The term is that it's a false gravity. So artificial gravity. So in my past research that I did, I managed to actually develop an artificial gravity. So to develop an artificial gravity is quite simple to do so. So it's actually easy to develop an artificial gravity where you play in with the electrodes, the capacitors. So it's a form of like a capacitor that you actually play in with the geometrical shape of the capacitors, and then it actually creates a net force of a gravitational well. That's what it's called. So and then what happened was that anything that is, it depends on the strength of the gravitational force. So if the gravitational force is strong enough, it would actually make everything fall towards that point of gravity. So this is how it works. So the Quran already mentions about this thing. I think this is a very important and a very interesting, it's a very interesting scientific fact to share with you guys. So based on my research, what's been done is that I found out that everything that comes close to this system that I created, the ionocraft, actually fall towards a point. It's not really a point, a position where the gravitational field is formed. So this is something about the hyperjump technology. So once you know about how the gravity works, so gravity actually dilates time. So which means that if you have, because it's due to the fact that it's a compression of the ether. So the compression of the ether makes you have the ability to move faster than those who are not in the field bubble of the ether compression. So this is how things work, and then this is how you can actually achieve hyperjump capabilities while at the same time you don't feel the effect of g-forces, you don't feel the effect of, let's say, the time actually moving fast. But what happened is that from your perspective is if you're inside an aircraft that works based on hyperjump technology, so what happened is that you would seem to see everything around you away from those ether bubble is moving slow. So it's moving slow as compared to those inside the ether bubble. So how does it work is that, so it creates a field bubble that makes you able to move faster than a normal speed of time. So which means that it's actually, it plays in with the rate of time, the time movements of time. So this is basically a technology that is already available since the time of Prophet Solomon. This is actually stated in the Quran. So I just want to share with you guys over here because it's actually available since the time of Prophet Solomon. But the knowledge about it maybe probably had been lost, and then it's already recovering now. So where we can find, that how certain thing works. So in order for you to understand how this ether works, it's very important to know the ether effects and also to understand how certain kinds of sacred geometry actually work. So sacred geometry is actually important. So just in case if you guys were asking, was like, how do I know about this thing, and then what is my background in terms of education and stuff like that. What is my background education and stuff like that. So just so you guys know, my background education is in nuclear science. I basically studied and graduated in the field of nuclear science. So you can say that I am a nuclear scientist. You can say that sort of like I didn't actually work in in the field of science research, but I still do some research personally. I did still do some experiments. So in other words, you can say that I'm also a scientist, or a scientist, which is the nuclear scientist. So so I did some research. One of my research that has been done is about basically focusing more on the effects of the ether, which is the Quran. So I studied about the Quran. So the Quran stated that the hyperjump technology is actually exists. So and then once you study about the science of hyperjump, you would notice that this is a fact and a reality that the gravity, false gravity, artificial gravity, whatever we want to call it, the artificial gravity actually dilates time. It causes the time to actually move much faster, so that the person actually can do a lot of things inside the field bubble. And then you also have I did some research, quite a lot of research as well. I also did some research, mainly study about the Islam and everything based on science. So this is some of the research that I done. So this is basically just to share with you guys some neat information about hyperjump technology. So hyperjump technology actually exists. So just again, I just wanted to emphasize on this, just in case if you guys were asking, was like, how can I do a lot of about this stuff, everything. So because I basically did some research, my own research about this issue, and also my background education is in nuclear science. So I studied a lot about the nuclear science. So we heard a lot of news now about scientists, everything, but I didn't want to go deep dive inside that. So nuclear science is a science that studies more about the subatomic particles. And then when you study about the ether, you will find that the subatomic particles is actually just a wave, a light wave. So which means that if you basically smash all those subatomic particles together, it would become something that doesn't exist, because it's just based on light waves, wave frequencies. So above that, above nuclear science, is actually the studies of the fields, the ether, the medium that governs everything. So the ether is actually something, a medium that governs everything, that actually causes us to exist. So this is what the ether is. So the ether is actually what causes gravity to exist, is because of the fundamental properties of the ether. So the ether is something that actually moves towards a null point in counter space. So there's like a space and counter space. So in the Quran it stated that Alam naj'alil arda kifata, haven't we created the earth to become like everything that is attracted towards it? So the counter space, earth is created as the counter space where everything is get absorbed and attracted towards it. So this is how Allah terms gravity. Gravity is not a field, but it's what something does. This is how Allah termed the gravity inside the Quran. This is how the Creator actually explains. Alam naj'alil arda kifata. So haven't we created the earth that everything gets drawn towards it? So it's a term that everything gets drawn towards it. This is how Allah mentions gravity inside the Quran. Everything gets drawn towards it. So this is the effects of the ether. So because without the ether, there's no subatomic particle that exists, everything. So the study of the ether is actually above nuclear science. So once you dive deep down into nuclear science, you would get to a point that everything is actually based on fields, and then it's actually the ether that actually governs the subatomic particles and everything, electrons, and also everything is actually waves of fields, everything. So in the past, I was actually doing some of my research about this hyperjump technology. This is basically a very interesting technology to develop. You can also develop the hyperjump technology based on this INOCraft, and then there are also some scientists who actually developed this hyperjump technology, but they term it as the ionic wind technology. So what it means is that they created a form of a drone what happens to the drone is that it's actually falling towards the artificial gravity, the false point of gravity, because due to the fact that the capacitors, the geometrical capacitor is asymmetrical, so it creates a field pressure that makes the drone wants to actually fall towards the artificial gravity, the false point of gravity, instead of falling towards the Earth, because the false point of gravity is stronger than the Earth's gravitational force. So this is what happens. So there's a system that is created that once you actually develop this thing much more effective, it gets to a point that it would accelerate so strong that it becomes a hyperjump. So which means that you can also study this thing. You can also see this effect. If you Google on YouTube, you Google this thing, or you search on YouTube, ionic thruster. So what happened to the ionic thruster is that at the point where you actually turn on the switch, it simply just floats up there. So what's going on is that it's actually falling towards the counter speed. That's actually a form of a small hyperjump. So the stronger the power, the stronger the voltage and the current that is applied to those systems. So the faster the hyperjump would get. So and then because this system is actually not really you can say that there's a lot of ways that we can actually preserve the energy. So there's a lot of other systems that we can actually design to build where you can actually preserve the energy while at the same time create an effective hyperjump effect. So this is the things that the technology that is actually available, and then a lot of other countries had already been developing it, um, and then they called this technology the MHD aircraft, magneto hydrodynamic aircraft. So it's based on the Mercury vortex engine. So this Mercury vortex engine would actually cause the Mercury vortex engine is based on the movements of the ether in the counterclockwise. So the movements of the counterclockwise actually creates a field pressure, a low field pressure above it, so which causes the craft to actually fall upwards. So this is how things work. And then they also have two types of anti-gravity. Excuse me. So this is something just to share with you guys. So you guys can find there's a lot of interesting um, scientific facts that are available in the Quran. So the first thing that we just discussed is that about the ruqya. Ruqya is something like mantra or something like that. So whatever that I said, the words that I said, it actually translates into a geometrical shape of sound wave that once you put it in the, it's called a Chladni plate if I'm not mistaken. So it actually shapes in the form of like certain geometrical shape. So the best words in the Quran, the best words that you can even say in this world is actually the words of the Quran because it has the best geometrical shape of sound wave. So this geometrical shape of sound wave affects the characteristics of water molecules, and then this water molecules would actually, by chance, would actually have an effect that it actually engulfs the toxins inside the body. It also engulfs the toxins inside the body, and also would, by theory, would also stimulate cellular um, repair and also cell regenerations in the body because um, it's due to the shape of the water. But anyways, this thing still needs to be confirmed about how it actually works. I just wanted to share with you guys. So you guys had to study about this yourself. So, but in general, the vibrations actually affects how the water molecule shapes. And then you can also find the facts from the Quran stated about the hyperjump technology. So hyperjump technology is not a simple technology that is being built. So this is why in the Quran stated that because it says that those who had the knowledge from the book. So in this Quran stated that the book, like the previous revelations that were revealed to humankind, probably based on my research, the previous revelation to the prophets before Prophet Sulaiman, probably Allah had already teach human beings about sacred geometry. Because if you go to a lot of the religions all around the world, some of the religions that you find in the scriptures, it stated a lot about sacred geometries, the power of numbers, the power of prime numbers, everything. And then what's important about this is that in the hadith, it stated that Allah is uneven. He likes uneven numbers, which means that Allah is one. One is an uneven number, and Allah likes numbers that is uneven. Let's say 1, 3, 5, 6. So this is because if you study numbers, the numbers that are uneven has a very special characteristics in science, in math, and in science. You can find that the Fibonacci sequence is based on the prime numbers. Everything, if I'm not mistaken, is based on the prime numbers. It's based on the uneven numbers. So this is the imprint of Allah. So Allah created everything based on what He likes. So Allah created the universe based on what He likes. So if we study the universe based on sacred geometries, we know that certain numbers, everything, that you can find that every, like the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, everything, it actually pops up in every place, even in our creation, in us. We have the golden ratio in us. There's a golden ratio in flower petals. There's golden ratio in the universe. So, so these are the important things, sacred geometries that is going on around us, and also, it is thought that the knowledge about sacred geometry has been revealed in the past nations, not just sacred geometry, but knowledge about numbers, math. Math is thought to be a revelation instead of we create math. Humans don't create math. So, based on my study, math seems to be, I mean, some parts of the math seems to be a revelation by Allah towards the past nations. So this is why you find a lot of the past nations, they play in a lot with the golden ratio. They play in a lot with the sacred geometry, everything, because it's a revelation by Allah. And then in the Quran, it stated that قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك. It clearly states that said the one who had knowledge from the book, I will bring it to you before you can even blink your eyes. So it clearly states out that there's a revelation in the past that actually teach you a knowledge that you can achieve hyperjump technology. Because if you study about hyperjump technology, you would know that the only way to achieve hyperjump technology is by understanding sacred geometry. So sacred geometry, and then once you study sacred geometry, it is actually a lot related to a lot of the religion that is in this world. Let's say you go to a lot ancient religion in this world. I'm not stating that those religion are actually the true religion or stuff like that, because Islam is the true religion. So what is stated in the Quran is that once you do the research, the theory actually points out that Allah had revealed sacred geometries and math towards the past nations. So but what happened to those past nations is that the message of monotheism actually changed through time. So instead of worshiping Allah, they worship false god. But some parts of the knowledge about sacred geometry still survive until now. This is why you can find a lot of the knowledge about sacred geometry exists in some other religions out there, ancient religions out there, everything.